So what? I want us to ask whether the three members of parliament on the panel, whether you would be prepared to actually engage with the GCMG on the points that Rifkind raised about the Sandwich Joint Declaration. There is the dimension of what Anson raised about the rights of people of Hong Kong that the UK has an obligation under the treaties to look after them. There is a wider dimension to it, which is that if the Chinese government can, as it has formally announced, that an international agreement no longer needs to be respected when it's not convenient for the Chinese government, which other government can take their treaties seriously? HMG can raise with all its friends and allies a very simple point. If any government raised with the Chinese government to go through their own checklist of all the international agreements they have signed, just to confirm that all those agreements are still in place, that they have not suddenly been decided by the Chinese government to be invalid, then perhaps the foreign ministry in Beijing will see that this is really not the smartest move for Chinese diplomacy.
As I'm chairman of the Taiwan Group, you know where I stand as far as standing up on various issues. Perhaps we could have a chat with you afterwards. I mean, the answer is yes. I'm sure that we will. We've got the interests of people, of Hong Kongers and Hong Kong generally. But let's at least use the opportunity to ask some questions of the rest of the panel. We'll speak to you afterwards. Anybody else? Yes.
Before China becomes a genuine democracy, to what extent do you think the CCP leaders in Beijing dare to really allow the Hong Kong people the right to enjoy universal genuine sovereignty?
I just make one point in response to that question. It's a point that hasn't been raised this evening, and it's very much in the mind of the Chinese government. One of the reasons why Deng Xiaoping came to the view that two systems in one country had to be acknowledged was not just Hong Kong or Macau. Of course, the big prize was Taiwan. And if the rights and freedoms of the people of Hong Kong were to be destroyed over the next 20 years or after 2047, of course that would make it even more improbable that the Taiwanese would ever contemplate voluntarily rejoining the Chinese motherland. And I think for the Chinese government, they will be sensitive to that issue, even when they appear to be slightly dismissive of Hong Kong's own interests.
Edward, would you like to start with that?
I think Hong Kong has been used not really as a model for Taiwan, to be honest. I think it has been used as a hub to transfer all their money from CCP. I think, practically speaking, I think that is the truth right now, and I don't think Taiwanese would ever really think of rejoining or the so-called reunification at this moment, because they already have the popular sovereignty in their country. So why would they join an authoritarian regime? I cannot think of a reason about it. So, and the reason, and the answer to the question of whether CCP will allow genuine universal sovereignty, I think, I really wonder whether in my lifetime I could, to be honest, because without any major change in the whole international spectrum or international arena, there won't be a chance. As long as most of the governments right now are compromising human rights in mainland China, in Hong Kong, and also a lot of violations of human rights around the world by kidnapping citizens overseas back to China, because they were all claimed as Chinese first, British second, or Canadian second, or a Swedish second. Well, that is nonsense at this moment, but I think the government around the world, they do not really turn a blind eye to it, but they simply do not do enough at this moment.
How much of Hong Kong, how many of the population want universal suffrage, would you say?
Wow, more than half. More than half.
If there was a referendum?
Yeah, Absolutely. Because
Not that you're going to get one. Anson, would you like to start? It's a great question, by the way.
I'm not as pessimistic as Anson. I think what we suffer from at the moment is a basic trust. We don't really have a well-established channel of communicating with the top leadership. Everything has to be filtered through the liaison office or through the Hong Kong Power Affairs office. And by the time they reach the years of the top leadership, I think they've been totally distorted. So they don't really get an honest appraisal of what's going on in Hong Kong, how Hong Kong people feel, what young people's concerns are. And somehow, maybe with the new chief executive, maybe she can help to bridge this gap. We need to be able to sit down and discuss our concerns with Beijing. Now, of course, one of the excuses frequently thrown at us for dragging their feet on universal suffrage is the contagion effect. So if Hong Kong has it, the rest of mainland China will be agitating for one man vote. I don't think there are very many people in the mainland who are agitating for one man one vote, but I think there will be increasing clamors for a more transparent, a more accountable government. This is the inevitable progress, the inevitable momentum of human progress. You have more of the mainlanders seeing more of the world. They're being educated overseas. The pervasiveness of social media, they themselves will very soon demand accountable, transparent. We in Hong Kong always felt that if only Beijing would trust the people of Hong Kong, give us one man vote, we will demonstrate through our action at the ballot box that we will return the chief executive who can on the one hand work with Beijing, but very much be seen in the eyes of Hong Kong people to be our chief executive, to be defending, helping Hong Kong to defend one country, two systems, and standing on our side and representing Hong Kong's people's views to Beijing. And to the extent that we make a success of this, and I'm convinced that we can make a success of this, maybe mainland Chinese authorities can use the Hong Kong model as a basis for deciding to experiment with the introduction of democracy in China. Not necessarily at the pace that we have progressed, but it will serve as a sort of a basis for them to consider.
Malte, is there any demand within mainland China for some form of proper suffrage that they currently deny?
Yeah, it's a good question, because of course we don't have any surveys the way we have here. But I think what Ms. Chen mentioned in terms of accountability, I think there is definitely. There are many different ways of looking at democracy, but I think for accountability, I think there's definitely a great appetite. And I just wanted to come back to the point of whether or not it is realistic. And I think at the moment it is news to expect universal suffrage genuine universal suffrage for Hong Kong. I think one reason was mentioned, Ms. Chen mentioned, that we don't have any neutral group in between, so that the liaison office is politicized and has its own interests. But I think there has been a lot of criticism against people demanding independence because it would trigger a reaction by China. But I think if we think about universal suffrage, what does it actually mean? It would mean de facto sovereignty, right? You have your own head of your quasi-state, yeah? And of course, China will not allow this, yeah? So if localism or independence people are under pressure now, it could be people demanding universal suffrage tomorrow. I think I don't at the moment see any move into this direction.
Okay, somebody at the back was the lady there.
Okay. Yeah. Shifang Long from LSE Taiwan program. I think the Hong Kong has long been playing the role as a medium between China and the West. So my question is, to what degree or for what aspect Hong Kong could be remain as a different system from China, but not from the Hong Kong people the interest, but from China government interest. I mean, for example, you just mentioned maybe Hong Kong is the only one place in China the renminbi could be transferred to, right? To do some kind of trading or something.
Offshore trading. Do you want to take that? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it's a good question, and I think I tried to look at this in the presentation a little bit, because I think, and this goes back to what Edward was saying, for pure economic purposes, Hong Kong has to have a certain different degree, just to keep these economic interests. I mentioned the Panama Papers and these shell companies. So you know that a lot of mainland officials try to get Hong Kong ID cards for their families. So I think all these overseas investments, because they know themselves, China is so unstable, and Hong Kong with international status offers some kind of stability, but at the same time controlling this as much as possible. So I think for the foreseeable future, we will see some kind of difference between Hong Kong and China, as long as it's economically useful for Beijing.
At one stage, Anson, they were talking about allowing people from Shenzhen free movement into Hong Kong. Did that ever happen? No?
I mean,
There's a lot of people that travel from Shenzhen.
There is a distinct border between Hong Kong and the rest of mainland China. You cannot come in at will. There is the one-way permit system and the two-way permit. Some are entitled to come and establish residence in Hong Kong under the 150 persons per day quota. We have this arrangement that we have in China. But there is no free movement of people for permanent residence in Hong Kong. And I think you need to hold the line there. Because this is one of the reasons why, for example, America grants to Hong Kong special treatment precisely because we have a totally different system. If that system goes, Congress has already made it clear that if China walks away from the Basic Law and the Joint Declaration, then they need to look again at whether Hong Kong should continue to receive special treatment.
Yeah, can I just add one point? I think from an economic point of view, we have to recognize also that Hong Kong's importance or leverage in relation to China is much less than it was in 1997. At that time, Hong Kong's GDP was 20% of the whole of China when it became part of China. Now it's not 20%, it's 3%. Not because Hong Kong has declined, but because of the extraordinary expansion of China's own economy.
I think that's only to be expected, but then Hong Kong's contribution to our motherland has never really been total just about size.
True.
Ben.
Thank you. Ben Rogers. I'm a human rights campaigner, and I lived in Hong Kong for 5 years, the first 5 years after the handover. I'm sure we would all have our frustrations with the United Nations, but I'm just wondering, a question for all the speakers, but particularly for Anson Chan and for Sir Malcolm. Given that the Joint Declaration is, if I understand it correctly, an international treaty lodged at the United Nations, is any thought being given by anybody, and particularly by the British government, to raising what China has said in the last few days about the Joint Declaration at the United Nations and using whatever mechanisms there may be at the UN, if the treaty is indeed lodged there, to protest at China's remarks?
I doubt if its status in the United Nations, simply being lodged in the UN, makes much of a difference. Either the United Kingdom government wants to raise the issues or it doesn't. If it wants to raise the issues, it has many opportunities to do so, which could include in the United Nations. For example, the Foreign Secretary, whoever it is, makes an annual speech at the General Assembly of the United Nations covering various issues around the world. Could quite easily raise it in that forum if that was the policy. So I don't think the UN has a unique role to play, and in any event, the UN will only get involved if its member states, particularly on the Security Council, have a unanimous desire to see it do so. And guess what? There wouldn't be unanimity in the Security Council.
Can I ask you, Malcolm, are you disappointed, like Anson Chan, about the reaction of Britain so far?
I am a little bit disappointed because I think that British prime ministers and governments can often overreact to the damage that might be done to the wider relationship with China. When I was Foreign Secretary, it was a much more sensitive time because we were actually involved in the negotiation. I met the Dalai Lama. And my officials in the Foreign Office tried to discourage me from doing so. So we reached a compromise that instead of meeting him in the Foreign Office, I met him in my official residence in Carlton Gardens. And the press were not invited. But it was known that I had met him. And there was a protest, and they made an issue of it, but there were no consequences. So, yes, David Cameron, of course, met the Dalai Lama at the war consequences, and that has discouraged them since then. But the Dalai Lama is not a specific British responsibility. However important the joint declaration is. And I agree with Stephen Tsang when he said that the Chinese government cannot simply describe one international treaty that they've signed as of no significance unless they are going to delegitimize and devalue all the other international treaties that they've signed with many states around the world.
Anson, do you think that the United Nations proves a vehicle?
I actually recollect that Robin Cook, the then Foreign Secretary, was actually asked a question: what would happen if China breached the provisions in the JD and the basic law? And he actually said, we will take the case to the United Nations. So what has become of that?
Good question.
So just to pursue this particular point, having been responsible, as Malcolm knows and Anson knows, for the last 4 years of the negotiations with the Chinese, and the joint declaration was central to all our work. During my time in the Foreign Office, I'm absolutely certain that had any Chinese official made the statement that has just been made, there would have been consequences simply by immediately summoning the Chinese ambassador here in London and asking the British ambassador in Beijing to go and call on the foreign ministry to protest. Well, the word protest is not one they like, so to express concern. So I'm rather surprised this hasn't been done. I'm rather hoping, since we have such a galaxy of MPs here, that somebody might bring some influence to bear on the Foreign Secretary at the moment to say that that should be done. It's a very simple
Why
thing.
do you think it's not been done?
Well, I don't know that it hasn't been done. All we've heard is that there was some sort of something said in public. If it hasn't been done, it ought to be done. And I think that that actually underlines concern. I'll just make one tiny point on vocabulary. One of the things this man said in the meeting was that the British had no authority to supervise what was going on in Hong Kong. I just made the point at an earlier meeting that during the last period of the joint liaison group, we were saying that after 1997, the British government would monitor what was going on in Hong Kong in the light of the joint declaration. The Chinese said, no, you're not allowed to supervise. We said, no, we're not talking about supervising, we're simply monitoring. There is confusion of vocabulary, which is probably explained by the words in Chinese. The word should be monitor, and if he's using supervise again, he's going back and, in a sense, misunderstanding. But our position should certainly be to continue to monitor.
If I could just give another illustration of the problems of vocabulary. When I was Foreign Secretary, I went to Beijing, having been in Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, people said, please, when you see Chen Chi-chen, the Chinese Foreign Minister, raise with them not just how many parties we will go to vote for in Hong Kong, but whether we will still continue to enjoy the rule of law. So I promised I would do that. And when I saw Chen Chi-chen, it was all done through translation. But I said, Minister, people of Hong Kong are very concerned that they will continue to enjoy the rule of law when they become part of China. And I've never forgotten his reply. He said, don't worry, Mr. Rifkind, in China, we too believe in the rule of law. In China, the people must obey the law. and I said, now hold on a minute. When we talk about the rule of law, it's not just the people who must obey the law, it's the government must be under the law, and the courts must be independent of the government. He not only didn't agree with that, he couldn't understand what I was talking about. It's not, I mean, somebody summed it up rather well. They said it's not rule of law, it's rule by law. And they mean two totally different things. Putin is like the Chinese. They both believe in the rule by law.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ian Oppelia. I'm the chairman of the youth branch of Conservative Future in my university. I'm also a member of the Conservative Friends of the Chinese, which I have seen on a friendly basis here. It's a pleasure. I think at the moment that we have so many first-handers that we were during the negotiations and working with China during the transition period, and I believe that most people in here that knew how hard it is to negotiate a deal with China. And at the moment that China is growing stronger and stronger, we have seen Chinese influence in all sorts of areas. At the same time, we also see China is trying to export a set of Chinese thinking or way that we wish people to do things. For example, I think I have the liberty to speak to lots of people earlier today that when they are going to some sorts of forums or going to invite certain speakers, that they might have pressures from certain Chinese people saying that perhaps you should not do that because that would have consequences. And obviously, we sometimes have heard there's some positive response from the British side saying, no, but we will continue war, we believe it's right. As in, we don't believe that, I think the Chinese side having the wrong idea. But it seems to me that this government, it's not quite getting the idea right, as in, you don't necessarily have to agree with everything China says when it comes to, even if you want to maintain good trade relations, because when it comes to international relations, it's all about, diplomacy is all about compromising and also about lots of maneuvering for different interests, so hoping to get the best deal that will fit for both countries. But it seems to me that Britain in the past, at least since 2010, since the coalition governments, that our governments haven't quite made a strong statement regarding to some fundamental factors that it really matters to the people of Hong Kong, which is the commitment. And let's not forget that more than 350 million British nationals in Hong Kong. So this is not just a matter about joint declaration, this is also the interest of the Crown subjects in Hong Kong.
So Michael, is there a sense that the United Kingdom aren't prepared to stand up for what they signed up to at the handover, simply because they are economically petrified that they're going to lose out to trade with China?
I think you're putting it in too strong a way. I think the British government still believes in the joint declaration, still believes in what we've all been describing this evening. I think there's an element of pessimism that whatever they said and whatever they did will not actually have an impact on the Chinese government's approach. I think they are over-pessimistic. But remember, even, I'm not trying to excuse it in any way, but even more important than the United Kingdom is, of course, the United States. And the deep problem that disturbs one, and should disturb us all, in relation to the matters we're discussing, is the current President of the United States is not terribly interested in values and human rights, not just in Hong Kong or in China, but almost in any other part of the world. It's not an issue which he has raised in relation to his priorities. First President of the United States since 1945, and not to make it a central part of America's foreign policy. So when China sees that the United States currently is disinterested in human rights as an issue, at least as far as the President is concerned, then it's even less likely that any other individual government is going to have the impact that you would like to have. I'm not excusing them. I've already said I think they should act, but I can understand why they are pessimistic.
Well, China was an integral part of Trump's campaign, if you recall. Time and time again, he mentioned China.
Yeah, but it wasn't human rights he was mentioning.
No, it was all trade. It was all trade and how he was going to be protectionist against China. That's interesting. So we're going to leave in just a few minutes. So I thought I'd have an opportunity for each of the people who've spoken this evening just to reflect on where Hong Kong is going. Where's it going to be in 10 years' time? And I want to start with you, Malte, and end up with you, Edward, because you are the future of Hong Kong. As I said, I met Nathan last year, had a good chat with him, and our thoughts are with him at this very difficult time because we know what he's confronted with, which is the possibility of jail and financial ruin. And for a young man who is standing up for something he believes in, I think that is something that we all ought to think very, very carefully about. So, Malte, in 10 years' time perhaps, where's Hong Kong going to be?
I think it would not look happy, I would say. What we would look at is to carry on, as I think muddling through. So Beijing, I think, will continue to push for more control. And I think what we see in the younger generation, more hopelessness, a general apathy in the open, but then at the same time, I think that the ideas of localism and independence will continue to grow until the opportunity arises to express these more openly. And I think I'm worried that it might actually go more radical views, because if we have in the society people who are thinking about much more radical things than we have seen so far.
Anson Chan.
My crystal ball is not very clear. So if you ask me what's likely to happen in Hong Kong 5 years down the road, I can't tell you. I will say this. I think a great deal will depend, now that we have the new chief authority, on how much latitude Beijing is prepared to allow for that. She hasn't started off quite on the right footing, because clearly she's not had a completely free hand in choosing her team. And we will have to see how she and her team performs. But a great deal will depend on whether Beijing is prepared to instruct the liaison office to keep their hands off the SAR government and allow Kerry to get on the running. I'm sure left to her own devices, her instincts are right in certain respects, she will do a much better job than her predecessor. We hope, of course, that Beijing will see the need to get genuine dialogue going on with Hong Kong people, particularly the younger generation, and understand where they're coming from. That somehow we must make an attempt to set minds at ease. The voice that is calling for independence is an extremely small voice, but of course at the moment it plays into the hands of Hong Kong practice. For us in Hong Kong, whether it is my generation or it's the younger generation, we don't really have a choice to continue to stand up and fight and defend what we believe to be right. And in this respect, I think at the moment, a lot of Hong Kong people, particularly younger people, feel increasingly they're just a voice in the wilderness. Nobody seems to care. The Joint Co-Secretary to the JP certainly doesn't care. You have to somehow give hope to our younger generation. And the best way you can do this is to demonstrate that you are prepared to hold China to the promises that they made in the JP, keeping the basic law. And Britain needs to do much more to be standing up and defending Hong Kong's interests.
Edward, in a moment of supreme pessimism, you wondered whether there would be human rights in China, never mind Hong Kong, any time in your lifetime. And as you represent the future, unlike some of us, that's a pretty awesome expectation. I'm not sure you need be quite as pessimistic, not because I know the future, but because, you know, I can recollect in 1988, going to communist Hungary, East Germany, seeing the Berlin Wall, and I remember a Hungarian communist minister saying to me, Mr. Rifkind, do you know what is the definition of an East German string quartet? I said, no, what is an East German string quartet? And he said, it is an East German orchestra, which has just returned from a tour of West Germany. 12 months later, the Berlin Wall disappeared, and the whole communist system collapsed. So I'm not saying that's something comparable is bound to happen, but just don't rule it out. You know, we just don't know. And in the next 5 years, never mind in the next 50 years. In the spectrum between optimists and pessimists, pessimist has been said to be somebody who believes things couldn't be worse. An optimist is someone who knows they could be. And as we look at where we are with regard to the two systems in one country, it could have been a lot worse the last 20 years. They could have made a determined effort to destroy the system, and they would have got away with it. They would have suffered a lot in terms of their reputation, but they could have done it. Will they do that over the next 27 years? I doubt it. My prediction would be that on two things they will stamp down hard. On any question of Hong Kong advocating independence, and on attempts to use free speech in Hong Kong to criticize directly the Chinese government and the Chinese leadership, and indeed to expose corruption at the highest levels in China. That, I think, they will ignore the freedom of Hong Kong to suppress, but the rest of it, the balance of their self-interest points otherwise. The balance of their self-interest is let them have a separate system. It won't be a communist system, it will be a capitalist system. They won't have the Communist Party running Hong Kong at least until 2047, and we'll worry about what happens afterwards there. That is my least bad prediction.
And the last word to the young generation.
According to a survey conducted by BBC recently, it says about 80% of young people in Hong Kong aged from 15 to 29 want to leave Hong Kong permanently. And I think that's the expectation of our generation on Hong Kong. In the past, we have been saying that Hong Kong is dying. And I think my generation now thinks that Hong Kong is dead. There was a reason why they think it this way. But anyways, I think it is really hard to picture Hong Kong 10 years later, because if I go back 2 years ago, I was still in Hong Kong struggling to graduate. I was worrying how could I get a job. So it's really hard to predict the future. But I could say something in certain. We will have a generation sentenced by this government. Having fines will be paid. And for those people who are going to be sentenced, I think they will be tied with Hong Kong forever, because they will never have a choice to live overseas. If we have a generation like that, that means we will have a generation to fight. So I think maybe it's a little bit more optimistic or more pessimistic reality.
Edward, Hong Kong is a fantastic place. It's vibrant, and I love going there. And it's clearly worth fighting for. And if your prediction is right, that many young people believe that it is dead and would prefer to leave, then that's exactly what will happen. It will be dead. It is because of the young people who actually believe in something, who believe in something worth fighting for, and Anson, even an older generation, believing that there's something worth fighting for, that the human spirit can never be quashed or destroyed, because it actually believes that there's something that they're going to be successful at achieving. So my own prediction is that the young people will not give up, and they will fight. And eventually there will be the freedoms of voting and universal suffrage that you're all seeking. Can I thank the Henry Jackson Society for affording us the opportunity of coming here this evening, of bringing these four amazing experts together, for allowing us an opportunity to listen to what they've had to say and answering our questions. It's been absolutely superb, incredibly enlightening, fitting for 20 years on. Maybe we should come back in another 5 years, Anson.
Anson around.